Hi, welcome back. In this video, we'll be looking at a very popular technique called as low-key photography. It can produce some really cool and dramatic looking images as you're just about to find out, and it's one of my favorite types of photography. In the last video, you had learned about high-key photography. Low-key is the complete opposite of that. That is, everything is dark and you're only lighting up your subject, right? So I'm sure you must have seen those shots a lot, because they're very, very popular with different types of photographers. So one of the key things that you have to remember in low-key photography is that you have to avoid light spill. That means you should not choose modifiers that can just spill light everywhere. For example, let's say for low-key photography, you'd probably avoid an umbrella because it's just going to spill light everywhere. It's going to throw light on the backdrop like we have seen before in the modifier video. Now, the lights that I'll be using for this particular setup, we're going to be taking a really dramatic looking portrait, and I'm using a strip softbox. It's a great choice for low-key photography because it's narrow, so it doesn't wrap around the subject. You can literally just light up one part of your subject. So we're going to be using this narrow strip box as our key light, and for the hair light, I'm using the other strobe, which is on this snoot, and this is just going to illuminate the back side of my hair. So it's just going to separate me out from the black background because I've got black hair. Otherwise, you can also, a lot of times, you can also do low-key photography with just one light. Now, there's one challenge when it comes to low-key photography. Like I told you, one thing that you have to avoid is light spill. Now, let's say you don't have this bigger space to shoot and your light is very close to the backdrop. Well, in that case, what you can do is you can get your hands on this accessory which is called as the grid. And how the grid works is you can actually mount this grid on top of your softbox. And like you can see here. And once you mount this, what the grid does is that it just makes your softbox, which is already directional by the way, we've already seen this, the softbox itself throws a pretty directional light, but what the grid does is it just makes it more focused and more super directional. So it absolutely, you can just point it at your subject and it's only going to hit your subject. Now, just to demonstrate this, I took two shots just a while back, and what I did was I placed this key light pretty close to the background. So we are assuming that we had a very small room and our backdrop and our key light were pretty close to each other. So I was almost standing, you can just around 1.5 to 2 feet away from the backdrop. This light was pointing towards me like this. And the first shot that you're seeing right in front of you was taken without the grid. And you can see that just without the grid, it does cause a bit of light spill on the backdrop. And this can just slightly take away from the low-key effect that we're going for. And in the second shot, I put the grid on and I took the shot. I did not move. The distance between me and the backdrop was the same. And I took the second shot, and you can see that this time it really makes it focused on me, and it creates for a much more dramatic image because we're not getting that spill on the backdrop. Now, one thing to remember is that whenever you put the grid, it's going to cut a fair amount of light coming out of the strobe. So you can definitely increase the power of the strobe, or like we've seen before, you can change the settings. Like for example, you can decrease your f-stop number when you're using the grid if you're facing the issue of having less light. And like we've also said, sometimes it's also okay to increase your ISO as a last resort to get a proper exposure, right? So that's how a grid is useful. Now, in this case, the shot that we're about to take, the grid is not really too necessary for me, so I won't really be using it. That's because I've got a fair amount of distance between the key light and the backdrop. That's because I've got a bigger space. And secondly, another thing you can do if you don't have the grid is that just change the angle at which your softbox is placed or any modifier is placed, so that most of the light, just by laws of physics, it just doesn't reach the backdrop. So you can do a lot of things, in order to avoid light spill. So you can use the grid, you can change the placement, the angle of the light. You can also play around with what we learned in the inverse square law of light video, that is, make your subject go closer and keep the backdrop slightly away so that you have very less light going on to the backdrop. So you know all these things, so you can definitely find a way around. Now we're going to be taking a very dramatic image. So I have just got this book with me, and what I've done is that I've just put some powder inside it. For example, I can just do it again just to show you. So I've got this powder and I'm just going to spray it all over the book. And what we're going to do is that I'm just going to, when I take the shot, I'll just be closing this book like really hard, and it's just going to, throw that powder up in the air with just looks great because it's going to be against a black background, so you'll be able to see all those small particles of this powder. So it's a very, very famous shot. So we're just trying to signify that, let's say we're closing down a chapter in our life. So you can use low-key photography to create these really dark and moody, dramatic images, and there's just a lot of options to do that. So I'm using a 2-light setup here. I can also do this with 1 light, with just this light, but I tried that and it just came out better when I put a hair light also, because that just gives me a separation right here from the backdrop, as you're about to see when we take this shot. So I've got my camera set up there. It's a slightly challenging shot, especially in this case because I'm just doing it all alone. So because this requires the correct timing. So what I've done is that I have got my camera set to the 10-second timer, self timer, and I'm just going to hope that I get the timing right and then I'm able to get this shot. So 1 light here and 1 hair light behind on a snoot. So that will just make it very focused right on my head. All right, so let's do this. So I'm just going to go here to my other camera and I'm just going to activate the self timer. All right, everything is set now. I have activated this timer and in 10 seconds I come here, just watch my position, and I'm just going to close this book. All right, I can just see in the screen that we've got a fantastic looking shot. So let's go and check the shot out. And I hope that this gives you a lot of ideas to do different types of low-key portraits. One thing that you can do, because low-key is so popular among so many photographers, just go to Google and just type low-key photography portraits and you'll get so many amazing ideas. And the best part is, once you know how to avoid the light spill, it's a lot of fun and it's a very easy technique to follow. So I hope that you like this video. I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now, and let's go back and see our image. All right, so this is the shot that we have got, and I think this looks pretty good. And I have just converted into black and white. I usually do that for my low-key portraits a lot of times because black and white and low-key just goes very well together because there's a lot of contrast in your image. And one thing that you can do is that you can also directly shoot your shots, your low-key shots in the monochrome mode on your camera by changing the picture style option through your menu. But if you're doing that, of course, make sure that you're shooting in in the raw format. Now the good part of doing that is that you directly see the black and white image right when you're shooting. But later on, if you want to convert it to color, you will not be able to do that if you're only shooting in JPEG. But anyway, you should always shoot your portraits in RAW. So RAW should always be enabled. You can shoot RAW plus JPEG so that in case you want to go back to the color version, the RAW would have preserved the color version of your shot too, right? So I think this looks fine. Of course, this has just undergone some very basic editing like cropping to remove some distractions and just playing around a bit with the contrast, the highlights, the shadows. So I'm just going to be showing you these basic edits in a later video which is coming very, very soon. But for now, this was our shot. Do try it. If you don't get it for the first time, keep trying till you get the shot, and I will see you in the next video. Bye for now.